Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. I want to give you my recommendation on books you should read at every stage of your developer career, because over the past 10 years, I've read dozens of books on the subject of software engineering and how to be a better JavaScript developer particularly. And unfortunately, most of them weren't a waste of time, but they weren't exactly relevant to me as a front-end focused full stack developer using JavaScript. A lot of them could have been better as blog posts, newsletter emails. So instead, I'm going to encourage you to give these books a read at different stages of your career. So stages 0 through hired, I think you really shouldn't be reading many books at all, to be completely honest with you, because you should be focusing on building. This is not novel advice. If you're not hearing this advice, you're following the wrong people. If you think that reading a book will translate into you writing code, you are going to be in for quite a shock when you read a 400-page book like I did one summer about HTML. Don't laugh. And then I sat down on my computer and realized I had no freaking clue what to do. Now, if you are going to read any book during this time, I actually think it shouldn't be fairly technical. I think at this stage, you should opt for things that are going to help you career-wise, because you're likely changing careers. If you're listening to this and if you're learning to code as an adult, it takes a different set of skills beyond just technical. So, How to Win Friends and Influence People, going to be a great book for you to read to understand how to have better conversations, how to make people like you, how to be likable in a situation, which I think is an underrated skill that too many developers don't take seriously. The other one is the Coding Career Handbook. This is such a good book. I read this recently. In fact, I go back to this book quite a lot because it has a ton of really great information about just like how to organize your career as a developer, from like resumes to your LinkedIn profile to learning in public. And this person like really gets deep and into the details of what you should be doing. It's not like just fluffy advice like, oh yeah, write online and, network. What does that mean? What does that mean to do? He gives very practical advice here. It's called the Coding Career Handbook. I bought it twice. It was so good. Anyway, can't recommend that one enough. By the way, I'm not sponsored. If I was, I would tell you, but I'm not sponsored to say any of that stuff at all. So those are the two books that I can think of off the bat that you should be reading before you get hired. Now, that's, I think, enough at that stage. Now, when you get hired, this is when I believe you need to ramp up your learning, because at this stage, you're going to be in the job. It's tempting to coast when you get the first job. The first week, month, 3 months, it's kind of on fire. Your hair is on fire. You're trying to learn. You're trying to just keep up with the amount of work and understanding a new code base, which is difficult. But the problem that you might encounter is that once you do this and you get really used to the specific workflow and technical base that your team uses, that could be all you know for years. So to make sure you don't get stuck being a really good developer at one company instead of being a really good developer is by reading books and supplementing your education, because now you know the practical part. You say, okay, cool, I can make a React app, or I can make a backend, or I can organize a SQL database, I can update a schema, and I understand these basic pieces of what I'm working on. To get deeper understanding, which is what you're really going to want, I suggest a couple books. One, if you're a JavaScript developer, and this list is definitely skewed heavily towards people that are going to be writing a lot of JavaScript in their career, obviously I'm going to recommend Kyle Simpson, who wrote the You Don't Know JS series. Would I read every single book in the You Don't Know JS series? No, I wouldn't read every single book there. I would read the following ones: ES6 and Beyond, and potentially Scope and Closures. ES6 and Beyond is going to give you a really good base for the modern JavaScript we're writing. It might be a little bit dated at this point, but it'll give you a really good baseline to start understanding more like, okay, how does, what is async await doing? Like, how does that kind of work? What are arrow functions? Why are they different than regular functions? Scope and closures are going to go over the more conceptual pieces of JavaScript that you may not know or even know how to leverage. The scope and closure questions will often come up when you're dealing with really tough bugs in your code or even in interviews. And the more you have a handle on scope and closures in JavaScript, the better. This is more of a senior level knowledge base, I would say. Other people might argue it's for anybody. I would say read this once you get hired in order to not be super confused when you're just trying to basically get JavaScript to just work, right? And lastly, I would read Clean Code in JavaScript. Now, this is a very practical, technical book that'll show you code samples, examples of how to organize and write modern JavaScript. This is one of my favorite books. It's like Clean Code, the very, very famous book, but I actually think Clean Code in JavaScript is a lot more relevant and practical for you as a web developer or a person that works with JavaScript extensively. Great book to read. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I want to let you know that becoming a developer in 2025 is not going to look like becoming a developer in 2024. There is an overload of information, AI tools out there, so much conflicting social media BS that it's hard to understand what you really need to do. If you're interested in working with me and my partner Zubin in a very private, exclusive mentorship program where we teach you not just how to code, but how to reinvent yourself as a career changer and help you make a successful transition from your previous life into tech, we want to talk with you. This program is not easy, it is not short, but it is effective. If you want to schedule a talk directly with me or Zubin, just go to the show notes, parsity.io/inner-circle. Back to the show. Okay, now we're at stage 2. This is the mid part of your career as a developer where you're not super junior anymore, meaning you can kind of be left on your own. Maybe you're moving companies. Maybe you're moving up and expecting to do more complex features or build things that a junior person would not be able to do. Maybe you're even mentoring junior people at this point as a mid-level developer. Here's the books you should start reading now, and these books will expose you to some of the more advanced pieces of JavaScript, as well as how the software development lifecycle works at a higher level. And one of my favorite books is The Phoenix Project. This is a novel. This is not like your standard super dry, boring book about like, well, here's how code goes from your machine to the web. It's a book about a dude that's like going to go in this company and the company's going under and they're saying, hey, you got to fix this project. It hasn't gone out. We're all going to get fired if we don't turn this thing around. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And he goes in there and he sees this archaic old processes and he tries to fix them. And it finally like saves the company. I don't want to give away the whole story. Hope I didn't right there. Anyway, you should totally read it because along this funny story, it's written as a novel because it is a novel. You learn a lot about all the processes that go into releasing software and how to do that in a good way and all the funny things that you'll encounter at any enterprise or large company that may not be doing it like this. It'll give you some really good insight into being like, oh, that's why we do this thing. That's why we have this team, or, oh, that's why it takes so long to release code. So it gives you a higher level overview of how your code works in an organization or business in service of the business, right? In service of like making money for the business and how those things all interact and how you can like use some of these patterns to release code faster and make your business more money. Really, really good. I love that book. And the person also has another novel, I think, out there too, The Phoenix Project. And then there's The Unicorn Project. Similar one, Phoenix Project. Really, really good. Phoenix Project, great book. Unicorn Project, another great book. Now we're back to Kyle Simpson again, and this time I recommend Functional Light JavaScript. Functional programming is a paradigm, basically a way to write code that leverages what's called a functional style. I'm not going to get into that because there's a whole book written on the subject. Maybe I'll do another podcast on that at some point. If you're on the internet learning about writing code, you've likely stumbled across object-oriented programming, OOP, which is kind of the de facto standard for how to organize your JavaScript code and just kind of the most popular way that you'll find to write code. But functional programming is what people really use with JavaScript. JavaScript lends itself to a functional style of programming, and it's really important for you to understand some of the patterns you're going to see throughout your career and in big frameworks like React that really leverage a functional style of programming. This book will stretch your knowledge. It'll make you probably scratch your head when you read things like monads and some of the more mathematical concepts. But I think Kyle Simpson does a really great job of breaking it down. I like the book. I actually read it in a book club with my team at my former company, and we all got a lot out of it. And it actually influenced the way that I write code to this day. So I love the book, and I think it's a style you'll come across, and that way you can at least identify that style and understand, oh, that's why this person is doing that, or oh, that's why this framework or library might be using this style of writing code. It's really cool, and it can actually be really helpful in your day-to-day life. Okay, in this third stage of your career, you're a senior, or maybe you're even managing people, and there is so little information out there on this piece of your career. It's like you're past the technical at this point. You can read more and more books. There's so many really famous ones out there, like The Art of Refactoring, anything by Martin Fowler, anything by Uncle Bob. You can look up those books and you can get a ton of information. I honestly don't think, this is a hot take, I'm sure I'm going to piss people off. I don't think those are going to be as helpful for your career as a full stack developer, maybe working within startups, medium to large size companies. If you're in big IT working with more class-based languages, these books may be really helpful. I honestly think that at this stage, you should be reading books that are more about the people side of things than the technical side of things. And here's a few books that really helped me as I made the transition from senior engineer into engineering manager or staff engineer, when I was basically in charge of meeting with people, understanding project timelines, working with people to help accelerate their careers, and having one-on-one meetings with people on my team. I didn't really know what to do at this stage. It was pretty obvious to do as a developer, right? Like you get a ticket about a feature you're supposed to implement, and then you go write the code for it and you make sure it works and you push it out and it goes through the proper channels to get pushed out to the World Wide Web. That is actually so well documented and so standard that every company you go to will follow some version of that thing. But when you get into management, things get really weird. Like there's no handbook on it. You're like, what do I do now? Do I meet with people? Like, what do I say to them? Like, how do I talk to them? Do I tell them what to do? I'm the boss now. That's not how it works. And I know that there's a lot of terrible managers out there because I'm on LinkedIn all day long and talking to a lot of you that have these awful managers. And I think I wasn't an awful manager. People seem to like me. And I read a lot of books on the subject, and here are some of the best ones out there. The Manager's Path, a guide for tech leaders navigating growth and change. Excellent book. I've read this, and it's about people that are going from senior into tech leads, into manager, into CTO, and it gives you advice for each of the stages. So maybe you're a senior and you want to know, like, what's expected now? It's more than writing code, but what is more than writing code? How do I have influence in a technical organization? How do I have good one-on-one meetings? How do I influence without having the title of like a lead or a manager? That's expected of you, but it's not clear how you might do that. So excellent book, really helped me out and kind of, fill in some blanks for what I'm like, what do I do now? What do I look at? Another really good book called Multipliers, How the Best Leaders Make Everyone Smarter. A CTO at my former company told me to read this book when I got there on the first day, and I thought, what the hell does this have to do with writing code? And I was a little naive. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? I read the book. Excellent. It talks a lot about how the best people on the team are the ones that multiply the rest of the team. How do you make it so your team can be more efficient, work better, get more done with less? It's not all about you being the hero of the team. There's teams where you get rewarded for the one guy that stayed up for, 24 hours to fix a bug. But wouldn't it be better if that one guy had spent, weeks or months working on processes to enable the team to do the things that he has to do? What you want to ultimately get to is a team that doesn't rely on heroics to get through a sprint or get through a project. You want to put those pieces in place that a junior developer can be as useful and effective as they possibly can be. Great book on how to develop that mindset, and also just like examples of what people have done to literally do that. So I like books that give me examples, like hard evidence and facts about like what have people done that worked, and I'm just going to copy that and then apply it to my own life. That's really helpful to me, and I think that's what most of us are looking for. Like, tell me how to do this thing. And lastly, this is a book that way more managers should read. It's called The Coaching Habit: Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. It talks about having good one-on-ones with people. It talks about all the pieces of management that have to do with the people part of management. One of the biggest issues I had when I first started managing other engineers was, what do I say during our one-on-one meetings? Is it like a status check-in where you say, what did you do this week? And I'm like writing down something. I don't like that style of management. And I prefer one where we're open, we're discussing what I'm doing, how we can improve things. Basically, how can I be a partner to you and help you with your own career? And how can you help me to understand where you're feeling blocked or where you want to do more, where you want to do less? That was really helpful to how to organize these kinds of conversations. And here's a couple books that I couldn't quite categorize where to fit in, but I really like these a lot. So whether you're studying for upcoming interviews or you just want to know more about like high-level system design, the System Design Interview is a really good book by Alex Zhu. That's XU. I like also his site, Byte Byte Go. Again, not sponsored. Maybe I should be. Alex, if you're listening to this, give me a box of donuts or something like that. I don't know. But System Design Interview is great. It gives you super high level architecture and kind of gives you that bigger picture understanding. I think this book could be read at really any stage of your career. And lastly, Designing Data Intensive Applications. This is one of those big books that lots and lots of people talk about, and it talks all about like the nitty gritty of how your data is stored at like a hardware level, on a disk level, how SQL works, how Mongo works, how NoSQL stores work, how big, huge data stores work. Really good book, and it goes really, really deep. So this is a book you should probably read. If you're a back-end person, I would read this earlier in your career. And if you're a front-end type person, maybe read this a little bit later in your career, maybe around the senior level. But I think as a back-end developer, this is incredibly useful stuff to know. Because what we usually work with are abstractions on top of databases. So we're working with like Postgres, or we're working with Mongo, or working with some other popular tool out there, or some ORM or something like that. But you don't really know, like, well, how is this working under the hood? How do these queries happen fast? Why do they happen slow? What is the underlying technology and architecture which allows this, and gives you a better understanding? And it could just be interesting, but I think it also will help you out in interviews, if nothing else. If you're going for really top-notch tech companies, really helpful. I always hope that's helpful. I'm going to have a list of all these books within the show notes here. I'm not putting any links to any affiliates on here at all. I like to share this stuff because it's actually been helpful to me, and I hope it's helpful to you. Again, hopefully some of the information I shared about Parsity is also helpful. And if you have suggestions or things you think we should be doing, I want to know, because I like Parsity a lot. I know it's way better than the majority of boot camps out there, especially the big ones. And I want more people in Parsity and not going to those other places and then contacting me 6 months later saying, oh man, I wish I had gone to your boot camp. Like, just go to ours in the first place if it makes sense to you, right? So if you have suggestions on ways we can improve, definitely would love to hear from you. Hope that's helpful, and I'll see you around. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.